hidden dangers, what NASA astronauts face during re-entry. Have you ever wondered what it feels like to fall from space at 17,500 miles per hour? Tomorrow, NASA astronauts will experience exactly that. They'll plummet through Earth's atmosphere in a spacecraft that will heat up to over 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt steel. And that's just one of the deadly challenges they'll face. Stay with me to discover the 7 hidden dangers these brave men and women must overcome during what NASA engineers call the 7 minutes of terror. Hey space enthusiasts, welcome to Globe Gliders. Today we're diving deep into one of the most dangerous phases of spaceflight, the return to Earth. Tomorrow's scheduled return of NASA astronauts from the International Space Station will look deceptively simple on television. A spacecraft will appear as a bright streak across the sky, deploy parachutes, and splash down in the ocean. But behind this seemingly routine procedure lies an incredible series of challenges that push the limits of human engineering and the human body. In first section, let's first talk about the physics of re-entry. When astronauts return from the International Space Station, they're traveling at approximately 17,500 miles per hour, 28,000 kilometers per hour. At this speed, you could travel from New York to Los Angeles in about 10 minutes. But here's the problem. You can't just slam on the brakes in space. Instead, spacecraft must use Earth's atmosphere as a brake, deliberately creating friction that gradually slows them down. This process generates extreme heat, reaching temperatures up to 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, 1,650 degrees Celsius. To put that in perspective, lava from volcanic eruptions is typically around 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. According to NASA's research during the Apollo program, if the re-entry angle is too steep, astronauts would experience forces exceeding 20 G, enough to cause loss of consciousness and severe injury. If too shallow, they might bounce off the atmosphere back into space, like a stone skipping across water. In Section 2, now let's discuss the heat shield challenge in deep. The spacecraft's heat shield is all that stands between the astronauts and these extreme temperatures. For the returning crew, their lives depend on a material called PECA-X, phenolic impregnated carbon ablator, an advanced version of the material developed for NASA's Stardust mission. The science behind heat shields is fascinating. They're designed to burn away in a controlled manner, carrying heat away from the spacecraft in a process called ablation. According to NASA's Ames Research Center, during peak heating, the heat shield loses approximately 0.05 inches, 1.3 millimeters, of its thickness every second. In Section 3, let's explore the physical toll on astronauts. The physical challenges faced by returning astronauts are extreme. NASA research published in the Journal of Applied Physiology shows that astronauts experience deceleration forces of 4 to 6 G during re-entry, 4 to 6 times Earth's gravity. Heart rate increases of 20 to 40 beats per minute. Blood pressure elevations of 30 to 40 millimeters of mercury. Core temperature increases of up to 2 degrees Fahrenheit due to the inability to regulate body temperature in the sealed spacecraft. After months in zero gravity, astronauts' bodies are already compromised. Bone density decreases at a rate of approximately 1 to 1.5% per month in space, according to NASA's Human Research Program. Their muscle mass has decreased by up to 20%, and their cardiovascular systems have adapted to pumping blood efficiently in the absence of gravity. Then suddenly, during re-entry, their bodies must readjust to crushing gravitational forces. It's like running a marathon immediately after being bedridden for months. What happens if something goes wrong during re-entry? In 2003, the Space Shuttle Columbia and its 7 crew members were lost during re-entry when a damaged heat shield failed. Tomorrow's returning astronauts know this history all too well. In the next segment, I'll reveal the emergency systems designed to save their lives if disaster strikes. including one backup system that's never been tested in a real emergency. In Section 4, let's talk in detail about communication blackout. One of the most unnerving aspects of re-entry is the communication blackout. As the spacecraft plunges through the atmosphere, the extreme heat creates an envelope of ionized air, plasma, around the vehicle. This plasma interferes with radio signals, resulting in a complete loss of communication with mission control. According to NASA flight directors, this blackout typically lasts between 4 to 6 minutes for current spacecraft. During this time, mission control has no way to know if the astronauts are safe or in danger. For the returning crew tomorrow, these will be some of the most isolated minutes humans can experience. The longest recorded re-entry blackout was during Apollo 13's return, lasting 6 minutes and 43 seconds. An agonizing wait after the crew had already survived their damaged spacecraft. In Section 5, we will talk about parachute deployment. After surviving the heat of re-entry, astronauts face another critical moment: parachute deployment. Modern spacecraft typically use a system of multiple parachutes that must deploy in a precise sequence. NASA testing has shown that parachutes experience forces of over 15,000 pounds during deployment at supersonic speeds. The material used in these parachutes can withstand tensions of up to 90,000 pounds per square inch, stronger than many steel alloys. Each parachute for tomorrow's return mission underwent over 400 hours of testing in wind tunnels and drop tests before being certified for human spaceflight. Even so, parachute systems have experienced partial failures in multiple missions throughout spaceflight history. Section 6 will talk about landing precision. In the early days of NASA's Mercury program, landing accuracy could be off by as much as 100 miles, 160 kilometers. Today's spacecraft aim for a landing ellipse of less than 6 miles, 10 kilometers. According to NASA flight dynamics, officers' variables affecting landing precision include upper atmosphere wind patterns, spacecraft mass distribution, minor asymmetries in the heat shield, ablation process, ocean currents for water landings. For tomorrow's return, recovery ships will be stationed across an area approximately the size of Rhode Island, ready to recover the astronauts wherever they land within the designated zone. Section 7 will give overview about medical challenges astronauts will face after landing. The challenges don't end with splashdown. NASA medical research published in Aerospace Medicine and Human Performance indicates that returning astronauts typically experience orthostatic intolerance, inability to maintain blood pressure when standing, vestibular dysfunction, balance issues, reduced aerobic capacity, altered immune system function. NASA flight surgeons will be standing by to provide immediate medical attention to tomorrow's returning crew. The first 24 hours after landing are considered especially critical from a medical perspective. Interestingly, astronauts who have spent more than 6 months in space require an average of 30 days of rehabilitation before returning to pre-flight physical condition, according to NASA's Human Research Program. But despite all these dangers, over 570 humans have safely returned from space since Yuri Gagarin's historic flight in 1961. Tomorrow's returning astronauts stand on the shoulders of decades of engineering, science, and human courage. In the final moments of this video, I'm going to share never-before-seen footage from NASA archives showing what astronauts actually see during those final moments of re-entry, and why many of them describe it as a spiritual experience that forever changes how they view our planet. As we anticipate tomorrow's return of NASA's astronauts, we can appreciate the incredible challenges they'll face during those critical minutes of re-entry. From the physics of atmospheric braking to the physiological demands on the human body, returning from space represents one of humanity's greatest engineering achievements. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into the hidden dangers of spacecraft re-entry, please hit that like button and subscribe for more space content. Drop your questions about this mission in the comments below, and I'll do my best to answer them. Remember to tune in to my channel for more such interesting videos on stranded astronauts' return to Earth and many more interesting and secret facts. Until then, keep looking up.